Okay, tonight I'm going to share with you an article by Paul Craig Roberts, a former member of the so-called establishment in the United States. After all, he was one of the chief economic advisors during the Reagan administration, and also served as a writer for the Wall Street Journal in the editorial department for some time. But evidently, a few years back, something gave him pause, which alienated him from this pervasive mindset, and it also alienated Wall Street, because he essentially is only writing now on alternative websites for all to see, as long as the internet is still functioning and not under complete, total corporate control. So here it goes. In his historical novel, The Leopard, Giuseppe di Ramantusa writes that things have to change in order for things to stay the same. That is what happened in the U.S. congressional elections on November 2nd. Job offshoring, which began on a large scale with the collapse of the Soviet Union, has merged the Democrats and Republicans into one party with two names. The Soviet collapse changed attitudes in socialist India and communist China, and opened those countries, which their large excess supply of labor, to Western capital. Pushed by Wall Street and Walmart, American manufacturers moved production for U.S. markets offshore to boost profits and shareholder earnings by utilizing cheap labor abroad. The decline of the U.S. manufacturing sector and workforce reduced the political power of unions and the ability of unions to finance the Democratic Party. The end result was to make the Democrats dependent on the same sources of financing as the Republicans. Prior to this development, the two parties, despite their similarities, represented different interests and served as a check on one another. The Democrats represented labor and focused on providing a social safety net. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, unemployment insurance, housing subsidies, education, and civil rights were democratic issues at one point. Democrats were committed to a full employment policy and would accept some inflation to secure more employment. The Republicans, for the last decade, have represented big business. The Republicans focused on curtailing big government in all its manifestations, from social welfare spending to regulation. The Republicans' economic policy consisted of opposing federal budget deficits. These differences then resulted in political competition. Today, both parties are dependent for campaign finance on Wall Street, the military security complex, AIPAC, the oil industry, big agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, and the insurance companies. Campaigns no longer consist of debates over issues. They are mudslinging contests. Angry voters take their anger out on incumbents. And that is what we saw in this election. Tea Party candidates defeated Republican incumbents in primaries, and Republicans defeated Democrats in the congressional elections. Policies, however, will not change qualitatively. Quantitatively, Republicans will be more inclined to more rapidly dismantle the social safety net than Democrats, and more inclined to finish off the last remnants of civil liberties. But the powerful private oligarchs will continue to write the legislation that Congress passes and the President signs. New members of Congress will quickly discover that achieving re-election requires bending to the oligarchs' will. Now remind you, I am reading an essay here from an insider, who knows how the system works and how it became slowly corrupted. He goes on to say this might sound harsh and pessimistic, but look at the factual record. In his campaign for the presidency, George W. Bush criticized President Clinton's foreign adventures and vowed to curtail America's role as the policeman of the world. Once in office, Bush pursued the neoconservative policy of U.S. world hegemony via military means, occupation of countries, setting up puppet governments, and financial intervention in other countries' elections. Obama promised change. He vowed to close Guantanamo prison and to bring the troops home. Instead, he restarted the war in Afghanistan and started new wars in Pakistan and Yemen, while continuing Bush's policy of threatening Iran and encircling Russia with military bases. Americans out of work, out of income, out of homes and prospects, and out of hope of their children's careers are angry. But the political system offers them no way of bringing about change. They can change the elected servants of the oligarchs, but they cannot change the policies of these oligarchs. I think it's going to be a two-part video tonight.